and welcome to Tonkin's product webinar. My name is Brett Lee. I am the VP of Product Marketing for Tonkin, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Roy O'Brien, who is our Head of Solutions. We're here today to talk about how Tonkin's no-code platform can actually enable IT and engineering teams to better support the business while also simultaneously reducing your backlog and having better, more maintainable code. So as an IT and engineering organization, you are having to handle business requests all the time. And what complicates the matter is that the things that you're looking to optimize for, like governance and security, standardization, and scaling how well you support the business, isn't always aligned to what the business needs, where they're looking for things like speed and flexibility and solutions tailored to their specific needs and scaling of a specific use case that requires more resources. And today's model of having business come with requests to IT and engineering and then you delivering solutions back comes fraught with challenges. You have limited resources on the IT and engineering side, and you're dealing with an extensive backlog that is growing all the time because business comes with more requests. Every single request typically requires a custom build that have high costs and lengthy projects. There's very little reusability also with custom code that you've built across the different business teams, and that adds to the overhead of maintenance on an ongoing basis. And finally, every single project requires multiple back and forth because there's the risk of having missed specs come in from the business that then needs revision and needs continual edits too. On the business side, they also have their own options now to buy additional technology solutions with SaaS. But guess what? That burden falls back on central IT and engineering to maintain on an ongoing basis. Now you're dealing with having to integrate all of these different applications, especially to the core products and custom build applications that you have already in-house. There is a lack of visibility over what the business is buying. And so that creates security and governance issues and having to deal with issues kind of that arise from technology decisions that the business is making without consulting IT and engineering. And then finally, just having too many apps creates a lot of maintenance overhead that you have to support on an ongoing basis. On the other hand, custom code also has limitations because, again, it's expensive and time consuming, and it adds to your backlog. And especially if you're writing custom code that touches your core product for things like, a sales trial that needs to be activated into your core product, or you getting usage data back to the marketing team or to the support team. Every single line of code in your core product that is actually tied to internal workflows creates an overhead and uncleanness to your code. And that's something that ultimately you don't actually want to have happen, right? And so how do you then allow and optimize for the different needs of the different sides, giving business more flexibility, more customizability, and more speed, while also allowing IT and engineering to better support and scale? That is what Tonkin's Adaptive Business Operations platform provides. At a high level, Tonkin is an abstraction layer between IT and engineering and the business teams. On the IT and engineering side, Tonkin provides governance and connectability and standardization. And the way we do that is actually by connecting to all of the existing different applications and technology that you already have in your environment, whether that's SaaS packaged applications, whether that's custom built applications, collaboration platforms, or databases. We can integrate to your various systems in a variety of ways, from native APIs to custom APIs, etc. And what we then allow you to create is a model that enables the business with the right permissions to the right applications where you can maintain full governance but give self-sufficiency to the business. And the way we do that is at the core of Tonkin is a no-code workflow builder that can enable, whether it's marketing or sales or other business departments, to build their own workflows without having to consult and have IT write custom code every single time. We make it easy to build robust workflows with a lot of the capabilities that we have in our platform. Things like simplifying all the logic dealing with how to coordinate with people and how to reach out to people, how to maintain context over the process of logic, no matter where the data sits or what applications it touches. abstracting the data model so that, on the business side, they don't need to know what the schema is of Salesforce and how it compares to Zendesk or Intercom, right? And being able to actually connect the data points between those different systems. And then finally, advanced capabilities like natural language processing and optical character recognition so that the business can do some advanced things without actually having to have a lot of technical background or skill sets. And so ultimately for the business, they can now build a host of different processes and workflows on their own, where they now have flexibility to tailor it specific to their needs. And because they can build it themselves with a no-code workflow builder, do it very, very quickly. And this creates the best of both worlds, where you can get what you need from an IT and engineering perspective, and you can reduce the backlog because now the business teams can actually build their own solutions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rory to actually show you how this works in the product, and I'll let him take it away.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate that. So yeah, what I'd like to do today is give you an overview of the Tonkean platform. So there's three main components to Tonkean. What you're seeing here is the ops module page. We also have data sources where you connect all of your different data sources, and then the live reports, which is where you track KPIs and the efficiency of your processes. So what I first want to talk about is really the engine of Tonkean, which is our ops modules page. As you see here, there's a bunch of different boxes. And each one of these smaller boxes that have a white background are comprised of their own individual workflows. So these will have different data sources, different triggers, different actions, different people all involved. And they're all filling some sort of process or automation or orchestration of your holistic process. And what you see here is the larger box is actually what we call a solution. And a solution is comprised of many ops modules. So you can think about solutions as solving an overall business process. Maybe like, your legal triage has a bunch of different internal modules that are maybe helping marketing specifically. Maybe some are helping for the sales side of things. There's really no limit to the number of modules you can have in a solution. It's more just about the permissions and data sources, right? So if you have an HR solution versus a sales solution, you're going to be using wildly different data sources that you only want certain people to see. And you only want certain people maybe on the HR or the sales team to actually have access to build and adjust and maintain a lot of these workflows. So that's how we break things up into solutions and more specifically the different ops modules. Now, it's really, really important to understand that Tonkean is a headless, UI-less platform. What you are seeing is not what the end user will be seeing. Lawyers don't see this, salespeople don't see this, finance people don't see this. Your folks who are living in Slack, living in email, living in Microsoft Teams, living in Salesforce, living in all of the other different systems that you have at your organization is where they're going to stay. The only people that see this user interface are what we call the makers. So these might be your RevOps team, your BizOps team, maybe even some of your engineers or product teams who are in here adjusting workflows and managing the different data sources and orchestrating the processes. So with that, I want to just kind of talk about, before we actually jump into what one of these modules looks like, is actually the data sources piece. Because the information and the processes that you have are only as good as kind of the data that you've got connected. So we have a specific data sources tab, and it's broken up into two pieces. The first one is kind of talking about all of the solutions, probably the cloud-based solutions that you've got on your org, your Salesforces, your Google Sheets, your Microsofts, SendGrid, Zendesk, etc. And you can add all of these different data sources, right? So we're natively integrating with hundreds of different cloud applications, right? And we always recommend that you use service accounts to connect with Tonkean, because Tonkean is kind of like a parking lot for your data. We only want as much data as you need access to get this process done. We don't want your entire Salesforce org. We don't want your entire Google Drive org. We only want maybe specific folders or specific objects in Salesforce. And you as product owners have the ability, or IT folks have the ability, to only provide the right permissions and the right access to these data sources to these makers so that they don't have access to absolutely everything. So we play very nicely with IT teams. And just to kind of round this out a little bit further, we can obviously connect to like different spreadsheets and file systems, your Smart Sheets or Google Sheets. We can monitor inboxes, right? So we can read through unstructured data with NLP and OCR. We can also connect with your databases in SQL. What's really cool about this, or your data buses. And if you really did want to give access to like your SQL database, once you connect it, you can actually hard code as the owner of this database specific queries that only you want the end users to see. So it's not like a select all entire table. It's select only the fields and only the columns and only the data that you want these end users to see to be able to take action on. So what I'd really want to do is obviously we can connect to databases and all that, but more importantly, we can actually connect to custom data sources, so internal APIs. So think about these as maybe like your internal client database that has a lot of clients or customer data, or maybe you have a custom data source that houses information that many different people within your organization have access to, but is not obviously like available to the outside world. Basically, what Tonkean can do is if you have the ability to provide or accept webhooks, outgoing or incoming, if you ever want us to edit any of the data, we can connect to it. So as long as it has an API or a webhook, we can connect to it. So what I'm going to do here is actually show you what connecting a custom data source could look like. So we're just going to say Gong tests. We're going to click external data source and we're going to create this. Now, what this is doing is we have just created a random webhook URL specifically for you and specifically for this data source. So really what you need to do as kind of the engineer or R&D on your team is if you want to give end users access to a database, to a specific data source that's internal, you can fire off and use this webhook and only provide the data that you want to send to Tonkean. So using this webhook, we will receive it, we will parse it out, and then make it readable and viewable so that the end user can actually go in and manipulate work through the process that they're trying to do. So just to kind of round this out real quick, we also do outgoing webhooks as well if we want to push data to a custom data source. This is where we'll get a preview of the data that's coming in, and then more specifically to get even more granular, we can actually encrypt specific fields that are coming in, like social security numbers or very private data that you do not want Tonkean to see or even your end users to see at all. So we can do that as well. So actually what I'm going to do is I just want to show you what this looks like live. I'm going to go over into Gong. Gong's a sales tool, but they have like a really easy way to just fire off a webhook to Tonkean, just using their native like workflow rules. So as you can see here, the trigger's a new call and I want to fire off a webhook. All I'm going to do is just put in that URL that was created by Tonkean, name it, and then I'm going to just test this. And then what's going to happen, it's going to say successful. And then what I'm going to do is go to data log, and you see that there's a new item here. So we can view the JSON and look at all that pretty data that was sent back from Gong. And then what I can do is actually go into here, and now I want to select my unique identifier, right? So this is probably going to be an ID of something, call ID. We'll just say it's this one. And then we can name the path, like the title of the call was that. Click save, and now we're good. Now the end user can actually go in and take all of this data that was from Gong and use it in their workflow. So let's actually jump into a module that's built out, not necessarily using a custom data source, but to show you like what the end user, or sorry, the maker is really looking at here. Let's do support ticket orchestration. So what you're seeing here is a Tonkean module. So this is what the makers are going to see, and this is again where the engine is. And we read everything left to right in Tonkean. And as you can see here, the very first thing that you look at is a data source. So Tonkean always needs to be monitoring a data source. In this case, it's conversations in Intercom. It could be any object in Salesforce. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be a Slack channel. It could be a form. It could really be anything you want. It could be that custom data source in Gong, which I'll show you in a second what kind of looks like in real life. But that's the most important thing you need to know is Tonkean is always monitoring this data source so that over here on the right, the users can take action, right? And the only way you take action is by with triggers. So you have to kind of put in the logic, right? So you've got match conditions, which are kind of your if-thens, right? So if Boolean is this, if the date range is that, if the text is not equal to this, if it contains, etc. Those are all just like your general conditions. And then we also have the ability to monitor fields. So in Intercom's case, if a new tag is created on a conversation, we can monitor that. If an attribute or a custom attribute changes on a conversation, we can monitor that and then take action. Now, more importantly, what you'll see is like a bunch of other boxes. As you know, we're 100% no code. There is not anywhere in Tonkean you can put any JavaScript, any code. The closest you're going to get to code is JSON if you ever want to send anything to like a custom HTTP action. But we do not accept any code anywhere. But what you can see here is kind of the replacement for a code is all of these different actions that the user can take. So we have three main categories. We've got our data actions, which we've kind of talked about a lot, right? Creating new Zendesk tickets, updating records in Salesforce, adding rows to sheets, any of the native actions that you've got in your custom data or your data sources, we'll be able to take and kind of what that looks like, right? You click Salesforce, then you have all these options to update and create all the specific entities, and then you can put in all of the fields that you want on that specific, asset record in this case for Salesforce. So what I'm going to do is actually just go back real quick and show you all of the other actions that are available to the user. Like I said, we have native NLP and OCR, so we can read unstructured data, PDFs, emails, etc. And then we can also have, what's the most important part is the people coordination action. This is really where we bring humans in the loop throughout processes, where we can proactively reach out to them, ask them a question, surface information to them so that they can take action. We can send forms throughout the flow, or we can actually monitor a form that kind of kicks off this entire thing. We can do approval cycles, ask for next steps, assign different owners throughout, etc. So like it's pretty limitless of what you can do from like an actions perspective. And in this particular case, just to kind of round out like what this use case is we're just monitoring Intercom conversations. And then when things are closed, we want to update them in different systems like in Zendesk. And then we want to match the person who created this conversation, right? So our customer definitely lives in Salesforce. So we've matched their email address or user ID or some attribute to their Salesforce record. So that every time a ticket is closed, we're updating their contact record in Salesforce automatically. As you can see, we're reaching out when a ticket gets escalated. Maybe the tag in Intercom is escalates and it's open and it hasn't been modified in 2 days or greater, et cetera, et cetera. What we're doing is escalating this to a Slack channel for ticket escalation so that everyone can see it. And then we're also having Slack buttons that people can take action on, right? So if it's been resolved, then we want to go automatically close that Zendesk ticket. If it's an all handle it, then what it's going to do is it's going to assign the owner in Tonkean and in Intercom, and then it's going to mark the due date in 2 days. And it's going to continually ping and reach out to these people for all of the open items so nothing falls through the cracks. So I am going to do one more quick thing just to show you like what this custom data source of like Gong calls kind of looks like. And this is actually like our live environment. So we use Gong and this is the flow that we have. So every time a Gong call happens, what we do is we actually look up Salesforce for the record. And then what we'll do is we'll actually notify the specific account channel that is related to in Salesforce. So from there, then we give the sales reps and everyone else who is in the Slack channel for that specific Gong call that just happened, the ability to create a follow-up template and email them. We can create an NDA from start to finish, right? So we're creating an NDA from a template in Google Drive, PDFing it, sending it to DocuSign, adding it to DocuSign, sending it to the primary contact, and then we're posting that back into Salesforce so it's always there. This is literally one-click NDA process that we actually use internally. And what you're seeing here is like, the ops person came in with no code and was able to do this, didn't need Apex, didn't need a custom engineer. All they needed was connection to Google Drive, to DocuSign, and Salesforce. And they were able to just click all the buttons that we provide in Tonkean so that they can actually enact change for the business processes. So not enough time to go through everything, but just wanted to give you a rundown on how we, one, think about data, and kind of the permissions aspect, and then how we give the business users the power and ability to make process change without the reliance on custom code and engineering. So thank you so much for your time, and we will open it up for questions right now.